Welcome to Life in the Fast Lane, your weekly, or in this case, bi-weekly handicapping show. We will be covering the Miami Homestead race for this Sunday. By the way, now at 2 p.m. Eastern, Friday, June 12th. Of course, our normal time, 2 p.m. Eastern. We'll be back next Wednesday with your next show here. But we have a bonus episode here this Friday, June 12th, because we had two races this week. We're going to recap the the Martinsville race, the other short track. We're going to recap Martinsville in just a few moments here, and then we're going to get to some free picks and analysis for Miami Homestead this Sunday. But first, let me bring in the experts. As always, I'm joined by Rocky Atkinson, sportsmemo.com, and I'm joined by Andy Lang, WagerTalk.com. And, it sounds like a broken record. Each and every week we keep telling you how Rocky either swept the board or easily won. Well, guess what? He had one off night on Wednesday, and I'm pointing that out because I want you all to know he's human and that we don't win every time. And even after an off night on Wednesday, he's still 6-3. His last 9 NASCAR best bets at sportsmemo.com. And all sports going back to the pre-corona break in March, he's now 18-6. So even with the losing night, he's still 18-6 his last 24 all sports. So, hey, don't miss out. Great bounce back card this Sunday for Rocky. And Andy Lang, by the way, at 2-1 night on Wednesday. So even when Rocky has a rare losing night, and I do mean rare, I don't think he'd missed in several weeks, we still have somebody come in and make money for you. And by the way, special promo code. I've got a promo code for all viewers out there. MOT, just like motor, MOT20, MOT20. Use that code, you get $20 off. Andy Lang's got a 5% super strong best bet for Sunday at WagerTalk.com. It's normally $39. You use the special promo code I'm giving you right now, you get it for $19. You do the math. But it's also 50% off. MO20. You can use it for Andy Lang at WagerTalk.com. You can use it for Rocky Atkinson's best bets at SportsMemo.com. MOT20 gets you $20 off the NASCAR packages this weekend. Isn't it time you got on board and made some money with the race at Homestead-Miami this Sunday? Andy, I'm going to bring you in first because you had the big night on Wednesday, 2-1. What were your picks overall at Martinsville? And give me some of your thoughts on the race.
It was one of those races where you're pulling your hair out, and then at the end you end up celebrating. So, first off, I gave out Austin Dillon over Matt DiBenedetto. Dillon blows a tire on the first lap and then has to get yanked from his car because he's overheating. So that was a disaster. It's never a good thing when you win a bet when laps down, but Custer was leading Bell basically the whole race, came in late for a pit stop. Bell sneaks by him, and then Blaney over Logano. I thought Blaney had the best car that night. He had a couple of he had an issue where he ended up a lap down on the first green flag and fought his way back, then had an issue on pit row, still ended up second. So he beat Logano. I think if he avoids that pit stop, he probably wins that race. So sometimes the gambling gods are looking down on you. We got a 2-1. It was fortunate. That's 5 winning races in a row for me. So really happy. Looking forward to this week's card. And yeah, my first ever 5% play on WagerTalk. Wow. First time. So excited.
Well, and guess what? Not only can you all get the 5% play, but you get a 50% discount on it because that promo code MOT20 takes down to 19. I think technically that's more than 50%. It's like 51%. So, I mean, if there's ever a time to get one of Andy Lang's best bets, is it not this Sunday? It's his first ever 5%, and you're going to get it for half price. But you have to use this code. It's not on the website. It's nowhere else. You have to watch this show to get these bonus codes. We're giving you some free money, MOT20, MOT20, WagerTalk.com for that super strong 5% best bet from Andy Lang. I'm going to bring in Rocky Atkinson. Rocky for you on Wednesday, but once again, you're still 6-3 the last 24. Give me your thoughts on Martinsville and what you were looking at this past Wednesday night.
Yeah, coming off a losing day on Wednesday, it happens. It don't happen often, but it does happen for sure. We're not going to win every race. I think Andy and I spoke when we first started doing the show, and we'll be right 9.5 times out of 10. But you got to factor in some stuff. You're going to lose one. You're going to be wrong probably on one of them, and then the others, you got to factor in getting in wrecks. losing tire, speeding down pit road, stuff like that. So you can't handicap that kind of stuff. But 0-2 in Martinsville, we always tell it like it is. What a crazy race. It was just strange in the beginning. Several of the cars I thought would be going straight to the front quickly went straight to the back. Keselowski being one of them. Blaney, as Andy mentioned. All these guys went straight back instead of going forward. Something just didn't feel right. Andy and I were texting back and forth, and we're like, what the world is going on in this race? Joey Logano, he won stage 1. Jimmy Johnson with a win in stage 2. Martin Truex Jr., the overall race winner. Truex Jr. is solid on that track for sure. Team Penske, we spoke about it in the show on Wednesday. Team Penske, second, third, and fourth. Yep. With Blaney, Keselowski, and Logano. Logano led the most laps, 234. Truex Jr. was second with 132 laps led, including the one that counted the most, which was at the end. Kyle Busch was my driver to win. He got some damage to his car early, couldn't recover from that. I was also shocked to see Hamlin finishing way back in 24th because I had him in my top 4. Jimmy Johnson with another solid top 10 finish. He led 70 laps, which was the most he's led since 2017. So that's kind of my race recap from
Jimmy Johnson. I was shocked, as an avid viewer and fan, that was only the third stage he had ever won in his career. Now, granted, it's only the third year we've had stage racing, but you figure you do the math. What is it? Times 2 and a little bit more. That's 72. That's 144 plus what we stages maybe, and he's only won 3 of them now. That just shows how off he's been in recent years. But it shows he is better this year. And yeah, we talked about if there was a track they wanted him to win at, it might be Martinsville. It looked for a while like he maybe was going to sneak in and get that win. Had we gotten some late cautions, anything could have happened. We got nothing again. 2 races in a row, Sunday at Atlanta and now Wednesday at Martinsville, where it was really kind of boring. I mean, Martin Truex just ran away with it just like Kevin Harvick did this past Sunday. But yeah, you're exactly right about Penske. We talked about it here on the show. I said the 3 Gibbs drives, excluding Jones, and the 3 Penske guys were by far my top 6, along with Harvick. And then Penske 2, 3, 4, just like Gibbs was in the top. They had 3 of the top 4 in Atlanta. So we're starting to see these other teams come on, and we'll transition into I think it'll be really interesting to talk about because Hendrick Motorsports has been the fastest team on these intermediate speedways. We'll see if maybe these other teams are catching up this week in Miami. Guys, we're going to get to the Ricky Stenhouse Jr. Award, and this one's tough for me. I don't have a lot of good nominees this week, but you touched on something I kind of want to figure out a way to make it a nominee, and I'll throw it to you guys to decide. But, Rocky, you talked about Kyle Busch getting down early. Another reason he kind of got back in the pack there was that strange situation that happened with the caution lap and the 1 or 2 cars staying out there. LaJoie is who it was, the 32 car. And only 8 guys got the waiver round, and then several other cars were lapped down because of that. And I think Kyle Busch might have been one of them, and he just never really recovered from that either. So I don't know if I want to give it to LaJoie because it was actually a good strategy move. He led some laps because of that. But I'll start with you, Andy. Who are some nominees for the Ricky Stenhouse unforced error of the race at Martinsville this past week?
I did laugh at LaJoie. It's like,
he should get a reward. That's like the Keselowski award. We might have to come up with that each week as well.
I have William Byron, not 1 but 2 pit violations, speeding and a loose tire.
Again.
So I also have the setups on Eric Jones, Denny Hamlin, and Kyle Busch's cars as their teammate Martin Truex laps the entire field. I thought that was my favorite. I just kept looking at and just wondering what Hamlin and Kyle Busch and Eric Jones were thinking as their teammate blows by him. Like, why can't we get what that guy has? So that was pretty funny. I also I laughed at how they kept talking about racing under the lights and how you can see the glow of the rotors. Except there's still lights on the track. It's still light out. You really can't see the glow of the rotors. And then they never did any close shots of the rotors. They talked about that. That was kind of funny. But my vote is for the Gibbs cars, completely blowing the setups except for Truex's car. So
yeah, it's an interesting call. And what's crazy about Truex is he finished 4th in stage 1. He was outside the top in the race, but he dominated stage 3. Just pulled away from everyone. Logano, as Rocky said, led the most laps with 234 led. He won stage 1, third in stage 3, and finished 4th. And like you said, Andy, Blaney might have been as good as anyone. Keselowski, how about this? If this is not typical Keselowski, we're going to give Keselowski the first ever Keselowski award, which I'm bringing up this week. He finished 3rd overall. He wasn't top 10 in either stage and finished 3rd overall. I mean, and had 5 laps led. The other top 4 cars led 132, 34, and 234. Keselowski led 5. I mean, this guy's it's the Bill Belichick of racing award. That might be what I call it, because he just gets the most. And this was a good track for him. I mean, coming in, Truex and Keselowski had led almost every lap the last couple of years, and they finished 1-3. So, in hindsight, it was very obvious. Just like the week before, I loved Harvick and Truex, and they dominated Atlanta. So, sometimes we have to take a big forest from the trees, macro look at things, I think. But, yeah, I'm kind of with Gibbs, the 3 Penske, and I got the top 4 right. Unfortunately, I was way off with Kyle Busch and Denny Hamlin, so I don't disagree. Rocky, what's the nominee or two that you're looking at for the Ricky Stenhouse unforced error from Martinsville?
I'm like you. It was hard to find one in this race, yeah. I thought. So I'm going to go with Austin Dillon. I mean, Dillon had trouble early, had a flat tire on lap 4. Supposedly they had somebody, I think it was A.J. Allmendinger, waiting to hop in his car just in case Austin Dillon's wife went into labor. I don't know if y'all caught that or not. Lap 404, he had to get help out of his car, but I don't think anybody was still there to jump into it. I don't think
he went into labor.
Yeah.
It's a good one. That's a good one.
Yeah, that's an automatic winner. Austin Dillon wins for going into labor during the race. What's funny, Rocky, is I did have him down in my notes. I'm glad you brought that up. I knew there was somebody. I was trying to remember who it was. Yeah, Austin Dillon would be. I'll be the tiebreaker there. I think he definitely. I like that as a pick. And then the reason it was in my notes early, Andy, was because I know on the show you mentioned him over Dinabetto, and I like Newman over him, and I like that at minus 105 earlier in the week. It was minus 160 after we did the show. One sports book, which I won't name, one of the very public offshore books, had it at minus 260. I don't know if that was a typo, or maybe minus 220 plus 160 on the takeback about 2 hours for the race. So I don't know if that was a typo or if someone's watching this show and the public's just all over it. Top 10 run and still couldn't best him. Ended up 12th. So when Dillon went out early, I thought of you, Andy, because I knew you'd mentioned that on the show, and I actually liked Newman over Dillon, so that did help me there. So I wasn't sad to see Dillon have the problem early, but yeah, he just had a rough outing, and it's something I wanted to bring up though about the heat. A lot of drivers have been having trouble. We talked about Bubba Wallace, passing out during the interview the week before. They showed Ryan Newman right after that. He was at Atlanta. And, I keep thinking, I wonder if the layoff had something to do with this. You wouldn't think having the layoff, but then again, they've been out of the cars. I don't know. Maybe they're out of shape. They're refreshed and ready to go. But one thing they said, the new aero putter. And I thought that was a real interesting takeaway. I hadn't heard anything on that till this race. And it's something we might have to keep. As far as a handicapping factor, the longest race of the season, the Coca-Cola 600's already happened, so I'm not sure there's much we can do with it. But yeah, these drivers are having a lot of trouble. And I mean, Dillon's a young, fit guy, and he did not look good getting out of that car. Bubba Wallace looks like a fit guy. Newman, on the other hand, was in the hospital a few months ago. So, but yeah, Rocky, I like that. I'm going to be the tie. I'll say Austin Dillon wins it this week. And I don't think he's going to win too many. He's a pretty consistent top 15. Might be one of the few times we get a chance to give it to Austin. Before we transition to Miami, though, I want to remind all the viewers out there, fantastic promo code for this Sunday's race in Miami Homestead. MOT, like motor, MOT, MOT20. You use that promo code at sportsmemo.com to get Rocky's best bets. You use it at WagerTalk.com. Andy's had 5 straight winning race and best bet for the first time ever. It's normally $39, but you use that code, it's only $19 for his first 5% best bet. That's WagerTalk.com. You have to use the code MOT20, MOT20. You get $20 off any package. Don't only use it for Andy's, use it for Rocky's, because even off a losing night, he's still 18-6 his last 24 all sports best bets. 6-3. He was 6-1 in NASCAR the last few weeks. He's now 6-3. You know he's going to bounce back strong on Sunday. You've got Andy's 5% at WagerTalk.com. You've got Rocky's strong bounce back card on an 18-6 run at sportsmemo.com, and you get $20 off both packages at both sites using code MOT20, MOT20. WagerTalk.com, SportsMemo.com. Go get it, make some money. Speaking of my very interesting angle here, and I want to point this out before I forget to mention it. As far as handicapping, be very cautious with past results because this has always been the championship race, as you two guys know. And one thing that's been the most automatic play-on bet has been that these four guys that are in the championship running usually finish top four in this race. And I don't think it's a coincidence. We'll talk a little bit about it. You know, the other drivers give these guys a lot of room, and they basically let them race for the championship. So the usual suspects that we see that do here the last few years, that won't be the same situation because Phoenix is now the championship race. This will be the only time they're at Miami. But it is still an intermediate 1.5 mile speedway that the same usual suspects do well on, and we have a lot of data for from this year and years past. I'll start with you, Andy. What are some things you're looking at Miami? What are your thoughts on it being not the championship race as far as handicapping it? And maybe throw out a top three driver that you're looking at.
Yeah, when I did my handicapping, I don't last finishes here, but I did not take it into account very much. There's a lot of pull over and let the other guys pass you if they're in the championship going on here. The other thing that happens is a lot of these teams, if they have a guy in the top four, they'll push all their resources. Maybe some of the better pit guys or everything. So they may it happened to Eric Jones last year throughout the playoffs. They took a bunch of his really good assets and moved him to other teams. So there's just not a whole lot you can take away from past performances. The one guy that does always run good here is Martin Truex, averaging a 1.7 place finish the last three races. So if you're looking at a guy who's consistently run good here, it's him. But I'm going to be looking at Charlotte, both those races, and Atlanta when I'm doing my handicapping. So when you read my picks and when we go over a free pick I've got, you'll hear a lot of that. One guy that does not run good here traditionally has been Kurt Busch, which is kind of strange. 4 straight finishes outside the top 10. So those are only the two things that I really want to take a look at hard when I'm. Other than that, I'm throwing most of the stats out the window.
Yeah, and another reason, I used to say this for years, another reason not to look at past results is they reconfigured the track, and it's been several years now, so most of these guys have raced on the current track. Maybe it was, you guys correct me, but it was probably, at least 7, 8, 10 years ago that they redid it. But, back when they redid the track, it became a totally different type of intermediate speedway, and you had to be careful there as well. But yeah, I think it's a real, Rocky, I think it's a real unique factor we have to consider is that this is not the championship race. And Andy brought up a great point about the teams do throw their resources, throw those drivers. And it's almost like all the other cars are a lap down is the way I look at it. As you said, they just kind of get out of the way. And I mean, the bottom line is they don't want to be a guy that wrecks or takes out a guy that's running for the championship. They just don't want to be one of those guys. And even during the playoff stages, you almost get that from the non-playoff guys. And that's why you almost never see a non-playoff race driver win one of those final 10 races. I think that's another reason in a couple months when we're handicapping the final 10 races that you have to be really cautious as far as using a non-playoff guy because they almost always run behind these guys. Rocky, what are your thoughts on Miami? I like that Andy mentioned Charlotte. What are some tracks you look at for comparables? And who's a top 3 driver you have on your radar?
We got to look at the 1.5 mile tracks. I'll look at track history here, even though it's not the final race, and I do take that into consideration. Still, you got to look at track history. We don't have practices going on. We don't really have qualifying. But I think more importantly, you got to look at track type race this weekend. So I'm going with to win it this weekend is going to be Kevin Harvick. I wore my H again for Harvick.
Here we go.
Harvick has 1 win, 11 top 5 finishes, 17 top 10 finishes in 19 races here in Miami. His average finish is a very nice 6.4 at this track. Harvick has finished 3rd and 4th the past 2 years at this track. He has no wins, but 5 top 10 finishes in the past 7 races at a cookie cutter track with an average finish of 7.7 at that time, during that time. And so I'm going with Harvick to win it this weekend. Yeah,
I mean, there's some tracks where I said he's not as good, like Darlington, Bristol, and even Martinsville. I said last, Wednesday, I said it'd be the time I'd leave him off the card. And the only non-top 10 he'd had going into Martinsville was the Bristol 11th. And he wasn't really in contention in Martinsville, but that's a half mile. It's a totally different track. It has no correlation to the dominated last Sunday at Atlanta. As I mentioned earlier in the show, going into Atlanta last Sunday, from my research, the 2 guys that were automatic play-ons at the intermediate speedways are Martin Truex Jr. and Kevin Harvick. And I've seen absolutely nothing in the most recent races that make me think otherwise. Truex and Harvick were the strongest cars at Atlanta last Sunday, and Truex is finally clicking with his new crew chief, gets his first win with him this past week in Martinsville. So, yeah, Kevin Harvick and Truex Jr., who Andy mentioned, are my top two as well, just based on track type. Andy, who's another driver you're looking at for maybe a top three here this week?
Well, trying to see if I can pick somebody that is not part of the usual suspects. You know who shockingly runs good here, if you want a real dart throw, is Clint Boyer. Last three races, he averages inside the top 9. So for whatever reason, Boyer seems to like this track. He's been terrible on the bigger tracks, but a lot of blown tire, or the tire goes flat and he goes into the wall or something. But if he keeps his car clean, which is a massive if, Boyer is a guy who can deliver a top 10, maybe even a top 5. And if things get weird at the end, he's always a guy who has been pretty decent on restarts. He could be a pretty good long shot to sneak into the top 3.
Yeah, and I think Boyer's a good hedge, too, because if he doesn't win for you, he probably could be a Stenhouse nominee next week, because it's hit or miss with Clint Boyer. He's been skating on thin ice this year. There's been a couple races he could have won the award, especially 2 races ago. I thought Atlanta, he really underachieved there, which is a similar track. But don't forget, he is teammates with Kevin Harvick. So we know that team has the capability of winning on these tracks. If they could get even a small portion of Kevin Harvick's notes or advice, they'd all run really well. And Amarillo, for the same reasons, always worth a look. And then, of course, the fourth guy is Cole Custer, the rookie in the 41 car, who I still think is behind Reddick and behind Bell a little bit. And then, spoiler alert, Reddick is a guy I might mention as my sleeper. But, Rocky, give me another top 3 driver, some sleepers as well.
You want me or Rocky to go?
I'm sorry, Rocky, you still with us? I think he might have froze on us.
Okay.
I'll tell you what, Andy, give me another Give me another guy you're looking at. It could be a sleeper or top 3. I mean, just a guy that's on your radar.
Okay. Well, I mentioned earlier that I'm going to be taking a look at guys who've run good at the bigger tracks. And Chase Elliott, average finish is 4th there. I know that's not a long shot, but the guy's been super consistent. He even ran good at Martinsville, even though he didn't have the best car. I think you have to look at him when you're looking at the favorites. Brad will always figure out a way to ninja his way up there. And I really like this guy. He was unlucky last week, but Austin Dillon, I feel like he's going to get rewarded for his hard work, for how good the team has been. I'm looking at him to finish top 10, and if he can get into the top 10, anything. So I'm going to be a Dillon fan for the rest of the season until he really starts to slide, which he has not shown any information to me that he's going to be sliding. He's got a great car. His driving looks great. So I'm going to be looking at Austin Dillon for some good surprise finishes.
Yeah, I mean, he's finished 8th and 11th the last 2 years at this track. And that's actually the 7th best average finish in all those races. And as you and I both know, he has not been in the championship contention in either of those races. So the way I look is you finished 7th best the last 2 years. You're basically top 3 with everybody else, because you've got to throw out the 4, championship drivers. So he's a guy that's very consistent. And the fact that he's coming off a real bad run, I like the bounce back angle. I like using that in all sports, whether it's football, baseball, basketball. There's a couple reasons it works. I mean, first of all, you get line value. There's going to be some extra line value after a bad finish. The public isn't going to manipulate the line as much. And then on top of that, you've got the emotional, motivational side too. And I'm always leery about the fact that Harvick didn't run well at Martinsville. He dominated Atlanta. He has that off race. It's really hard to leave him off the card this week against anybody. Truex Jr., yeah, he ran really well, but we've seen with Truex, he goes through these streaks where he just keeps winning, and I think he's kind of clicking now with that new crew chief, which is really important. A guy I think that's going to be interesting, and I'll see, Rocky, you're back with us. I'll get one of your picks, but we haven't mentioned any Hendrick drivers yet, and they've been fast on these tracks all year, but, these Gibbs and Penske guys are really catching up. Rocky, what are your thoughts on another top 3 driver? Andy was mentioning some long shots. He threw out Boyer, and then he threw out Austin Dillon, which I'll definitely say is a long shot as well. Who else are you looking at, Rocky?
First off, sorry about that. Internet went down. Looking at Joey Logano. Logano has 1 win, 4 top 5 finishes, 6 top 10 finishes, and 11 racer in Miami. His average finish is 12.7 at this track. Logano has finished first and fifth the past 2 races here in Miami. In the past 7 races, Cookie has 2 wins, 5 top 10 finishes with an average finish of 7.3, which is best among all drivers during that time.
I'll tell you what, we talk about be careful with the championship drivers because they're always top 4. But then again, one of them has to do better than the others. And Logano has won on this track, as you mentioned. So I think that carries some weight. By the way, the other one in the past 2 years was Kyle Busch. So, he's a guy that's been really quiet this year. And that's another guy I was telling Andy, I like guys off of bad runs. You got to look at Kyle Busch for that reason. The only problem with Kyle Busch is he just hasn't been as competitive as these other. Andy, what are your thoughts on Kyle Busch? Are you ready to pull the trigger with someone like him, or do you need to see a little bit more as far as finishes from Kyle Busch right now?
On these bigger tracks, I don't need to see anything else. Those shorter tracks, anything can happen. He wasn't the only one that messed up the setup, and then he got some damage, so out the window. He's too good. His team's too good. His pit crew is too good to be down forever. I couldn't find a match. I wanted to support him this week. I couldn't find a matchup that really jumped off the page. If Rocky's found one, or Steve, you found one, I'm certainly going to support Kyle Busch. I just didn't see one that worked out better. I found value elsewhere, but he's going to win one of these races sometime. I mean, it's only a matter of time before he wins one. It certainly could be this week. So, but yeah, there's no reason to get away from him. It's not. His car's not bad. It's not like his team is bad. He's just had some damage, got caught with a bad setup, and then he got Corey LaJoyed. So I'm not going to hold that against him.
I like that. He got LaJoyed. He got LaJoyed a lap down. That's a good term. Yeah, the 32 car got some promo. Bubba Wallace and LaJoy were there at the beginning there for a little bit, and they got quickly past as they often do. Rocky, let me know if you have another top 3 guy, or if you want to go and get your sleeper. Either way, what you looking at?
Another one, and y'all have mentioned him already, or you have Martin Truex Jr. Just runs good here, off a win in Martinsville. He has 1 win here, 6 top 5 finishes, 10 top 10 finishes in his 15 races here. His average finish is 10.2 at this track. He's finished second here the past 2 years. He has 1 win and 5 top 10 finishes the last 7 races at a cookie cutter track, and has an average finish of 9.3 during that time. I feel like he's going to run well again here at Miami.
Yeah, I was telling Andy a moment ago, I think Harvick and Truex were automatic plays at Atlanta over the last several years. They've been the 2 best drivers on these intermediate speedways, these mile and a halves. And I've seen nothing from recent races that make me think otherwise. Harvick and Truex were the best cars last Sunday. Truex is coming off a win. He's clicking with his new crew chief. And then Harvick, of course, off a bad outing on the track, which is totally uncorrelated to this one. Yeah, I agree with Harvick and Truex. You guys both mentioned Truex. I know you mentioned Harvick, Rocky. I'm definitely on board with it. You're looking at can be a play on, play against, long shot, top 3. What's one more guy you're looking at Miami Homestead?
We talked about Kyle Busch and having some bad luck. I think it's going to happen for William Byron at some point. I mean, this is a professional driver with an elite team and an elite crew. They can't keep having these ridiculous issues with loose tires and flat tires and multiple pit road penalties. And even with multiple pit road penalties, Byron finished top 10. So I think when you're looking at some of this is why it's so important to watch the race for me and Rocky and you, Steve, because you can look at the finishes, but you have to know why. You say, is there something wrong with his car? Is there something wrong with the driver? And it's not the team. It's not the driver. It's these random things. And yes, you can say that the pit road penalty is the fault of the driver. But it's crazy because they do that one lap through before the race starts, and that's all they have to get their cars dialed in. So I think Byron is too good. He's off of people's radar. Nobody's paying attention to him. I think there's value in him.
Yeah, it's an excellent point about the pit road speeding problems. We've seen a ton of those, and I'm glad you brought that up because that's something during practice. For the newer viewers out there that don't follow NASCAR, they don't have speedometers in these cars. They don't know what speed they're going. They have a tach only so they can see the RPMs. yet the pit road speed is a limit, say 45 miles an hour. So what they do during the practice sessions earlier in the weekend is normally they calibrate what their speed is based on the RPMs driving through the pit lane. And they have a little bit of a window. And these guys, obviously, every second counts, every mile per hour counts. So they're trying to push it to the limit. They're not getting much time to do that. And we've seen a lot of guys making more speeding penalties and other mistakes. And then on top of that, we've had the layoff and everything else. And guys like William Byron, Clint, Eric Jones, Almirola, and Byron seem to have had more pit problems and penalties than anybody I can think of off the top of my head the last few weeks. And those are guys that can win on these tracks. So, once again, a guy like Byron, I've been big on him. I've been big on Bowman. As you guys know, the last couple of shows, I've been backing off as far as using them in head-to-head matchups. I've learned my lesson because they're Stenhouse basically. They either win the race or they finish 20th. So once again, William Byron at 42-1 definitely has some value to win outright. Yet once again, I'd be a little nervous with him in a head-to-head matchup against a veteran because I just think the risk reward is better at 42-1 to play him to win outright. So he's definitely a live underdog though as far as a long shot because that team is fast at Hendrick. Rocky, who's a long shot that you're looking at in the race?
I'm looking at Jimmy Johnson again. He's starting to get a little bit more respect from the odds makers after another solid performance in Martinsville. He won stage 2, another top or solid top 10 finish. He has 1 win, 5 top 5 finishes, 11 top 10 finishes here in 19 races here in Miami. Average finish of 14 at this track, which is not great. It's not terrible though. It's pretty decent. He's the second hottest, only behind Keselowski. He has 3 top 10 finishes and an average finish of 6.7. So he's pretty hot right now heading into Miami. Again, I say Johnson's going to go out with a win this year. Not sure when, but I got a good feeling that he's going to win one. Something's clicking with this team that just hasn't clicked in the past couple of years. So I'm looking for Johnson to have another good showing here.
Yeah, and I'm seeing him around 25-1 to win outright. Pretty good value right there. Another guy once again that you can put a little sprinkle on with William Byron, and you're getting Byron at 42-1, Johnson at 25-1, and they've been on what I would consider so far this season the fastest team on the intermediate speedways. That's not a bad bet. And you look back at Darlington, he and Byron are running 1-2 in that one stage. They were the fastest cars out there at one point. So I think there's some good payoff there. Now Johnson's a guy I would be more comfortable with in a head-to-head matchup because he is a veteran driver. He's not making mistakes. He just hadn't been competitive the last couple of years, but Byron's kind of a young buck. He's all over the place, but both are on very fast teams. They're two teammates I like a lot. None of us mentioned them, but Bowman and Elliott could both win this race. Wouldn't surprise me at all. But there's just so much speed out there now with Gibbs and Penske running well. It's going to be a tough one. A guy I referenced earlier, I'll use as my long shot, is Tyler Reddick. I'm seeing him around 60-1, even as high as 75-1 at one sports book. Don't know if he can necessarily win the race, but I think a top 5 or top 10, he's worth a look. You can get him at 14-1, I believe, for a top 3, maybe 6-1 for like a top 10. Reddick's had a lot of top 10s this year, and he's been very good in the Xfinity Series, Truck Series. And he has shown in the 8 car that he can run on these super speedways with the big boys. And I'll be honest, as a rookie, he's actually made less mistakes than a lot of these other guys we've been talking about. Cole Custer and Christopher Bell are kind of in that mix, but I like Reddick in some matchups against those guys. Christopher Bell could be another sleeper, though. As Andy and I and Rocky, we've all been talking about him the last few weeks. He's a few weeks ago. That was kind of his coming out party, I think, as far as some speed. So I like both Reddick and Bell against Custer in any matchups that you all can find out there. Hey, speaking of matchups, we're going to get to some 2 free head-to-head matchup picks from these 2 excellent NASCAR handicappers. But first, I want to remind all the viewers we'll be back on Wednesday, our normal time, 2 p.m. Eastern, this Wednesday, June 17th. And I believe we're handicapping Talladega Superspeedway. So we'll be back Wednesday, 2 p.m. Eastern, June 17th, normal time, live here on this channel. And don't forget, more importantly, you can get a $20 discount on either package. Best bets from Rocky at sportsmemo.com or Andy's best bets at WagerTalk.com when you use the promo code MOT20, MOT20, just like motor, MOT20. MOT20 gets you $20 off any NASCAR package for this Sunday's race. Andy, by the way, has his first ever 5% best bet going at Wager. $39. It's just $19. Rocky and I are anxiously waiting to find out what that best bet is, and I'm sure the line is going to move on that one. Go get it now, folks. Not only do you want to get it early, get in at the best price, because I'm pretty confident the closing line on Sunday will not be as good of value as you're getting right now on Friday, because this is sharp money, folks, and this is a super strong 5% play. WagerTalk.com, MOT20, MOT20, get you that play for just $19. And of course, Rocky, 6-1 going into this week. He had a rare off night, but he's still 6-3 overall the past few weeks, and 18-6 all sports the last couple months. Get his best bets also with that promo code MOT20, MOT20, and that's at sportsmemo.com. Once again, Andy's picks at wagertalk.com, Rocky's best bets, sportsmemo.com, MOT20, MOT20 gets you a $20 discount on any package for NASCAR Sunday. And we'll be back next week. Don't forget, normal time, 2 p.m. Eastern Wednesday, NASCAR show. Speaking of head-to-head matchups, guys, that's what you all specialize in with your best bets. Let's get to a couple free picks here. Andy, what's a free head-to-head matchup that you can give our viewers for Miami Homestead?
No, this is a lesson in NASCAR. Don't be scared of a guy if he has a random bad finish, and don't put too much stock into somebody that has a really random amazing finish. I'm going to take Austin Dillon over DiBenedetto again. DiBenedetto, that was his best finish ever at that track. Austin Dillon got into trouble early, could not rebound. Austin Dillon is 3-0 versus DiBenedetto at Atlanta and the 2 Charlotte races. Average finish for those tracks for Dillon is 11th. DiBenedetto is 19th. I made this mistake early in my gambling days with NASCAR. You know, if a guy wrecks and you're like, oh, can't bet on that guy the next week. No, it's the perfect time to come back and bet against him. You actually want as bad of a finish as possible the week before, because the books take that into account. So when I knew Dillon was going to lose to DiBenedetto, I'm actually hoping he drops further and further and further so you can get a better price and a better matchup. And I'm not going to be scared about Dillon. He's been better than DiBenedetto. I like him. I real bright future and some great races this year. And I'm going to come. So Austin Dillon over DiBenedetto.
Yeah, DiBenedetto is an interesting guy because he was on the 95 team, which was Christopher Bell's last year. And, you know, he had some decent races, but wasn't really in contention. But he's been very consistent this year. But he's never really a threat to even be at more than a top 10 at best. And I do feel like he kind of has maybe overachieved a little bit, whereas you mentioned Austin Dillon definitely underachieved last week and is a very consistent top 10 to top 20 driver almost all the time on these tracks. So, yeah, I like the bounce back angle, and that's definitely the way you want to play it for the reasons you mentioned. Bounce back for line value, emotional reasons, everything, and that it fits all the categories. And DiBenedetto, as you know, we were both playing against him in head-to-head matchups. He had a much better run than expected. Dillon had a much worse run than expected, so it's got some angles working there. So Andy's free head-to-head matchup is Austin Dillon over Matt DiBenedetto. Rocky, let's get to a free head-to-head matchup.
All right. I'm also going to take Austin Dillon. We're high on Austin Dillon this week, but I'm going to take him over Christopher Bell. Austin Dillon, he has no wins here, no top fives, but he does have a top 10 finish in his 6 races here in Miami. But his average finish is solid at 13.5. At this track over those 6 races. Over the past 2 years in Miami, Dillon has a 8th place finish and an 11th place finish. Solid average of 9.5. Christopher Bell has not raced in Miami in the Cup Series. Austin Dillon, he's going to be starting 16th. Christopher Bell is going to be way back in 36th. The line's minus 115. I'm going to take Austin Dillon over Christopher Bell.
Yeah, and I like that you mentioned the starting lineup. It, of course, was a random draw once again. It is available here as of Friday afternoon. So you've got a 16th starter versus a 36th starter. Pretty big difference there. You know, qualifying doesn't necessarily mean much to the race, but this wasn't qualifying. This was a random draw, and you've got a plus 20 edge to start with that matchup and with the driver. So it makes a lot of sense. And I do think starting position is a little bit more important now when you're handicapping the head-to-head matchups. You know, these might be free picks, guys, but you both went with the exact same driver. We didn't talk about this beforehand, and it's not a big-name driver. So I'm sure all the viewers right out there right now, those that are paying attention, have realized that Austin Dillon might be a guy you want to look at your head-to-head matchups. And don't forget, there's hundreds of sports books out there, and these matchups are totally different in every book. And, you know, like we just said, we got one Austin Dillon against DiBenedetto. Rocky's got one against Christopher Bell. Depending on your personal sports book, you might have one or both. So it's great information. You can use that information wisely. If you really want some best bets, if you really want some strong winners, all you viewers out there need to remember the promo code one last time, MOT20, just like motor, MOT, MOT20. You get $20 off any NASCAR package this Sunday for the Miami Homestead race. Rocky's best bets at sportsmemo.com. Andy's best bets at wagertalk.com. Rocky, an incredible 18-6. Andy has his first ever 5% best bet going this Sunday. Why not get both packages, guys? You're basically getting one for free because you're saving basically half price. Andy's 5%ers is normally $39 MOT20, and you get Rocky's for $20 off as well. Sportsmemo.com for Rocky, wagertalk.com for Andy. MOT20 gets you $20 off any NASCAR package this Sunday. Get them right now, though, before the lines move, because I'm telling you right now, the safest bet out there, the surest bet, is that these lines will be worse by Sunday when the race starts, because there is sharp money coming in. WagerTalk.com, SportsMemo.com. Guys, thanks for joining me. As always, great show, great information. Back at our normal time this Wednesday, June 17th at 2 p.m. Eastern live here in this channel. Chiming in. Thank you for everybody out there watching, and we will talk to everyone again this Wednesday.